meanwhile in California, in a bizarre kind of dystopian split screen, the Golden Globes returned from their kind of forced cultural exile.
Ryan wrote a little script, and I like that you said forced cultural exile, because that's perfect. That's exactly what happened.
So they were exiled, and then they just kind of came back.
Nothing happened.
Hey, is everything okay? Are we allowed back in, guys? How is everything since we've been gone? And meanwhile, the state is just like 95% of it or something is under flood warnings. There was sunshine at the very moment that the Golden Globes were being held.
A sign from God.
So it's a sign from God. So
his approval passed over the Golden Globes.
There's more torrential rains coming later in this week after some 17 people died over the last several weeks because of this. They are estimating already more than $1 billion of damage. And we can roll some of this. The footage coming out of California, and I'm sure like tons of our viewers are in California, so they don't necessarily need the footage. They can just look out their windows if they haven't evacuated. But it's receding in some places, but the torrential rains are coming back over the next couple of days. It's also then expected to move north. Just utterly dystopian scenes while the Golden Globes are playing out. Did you watch any of the Golden Globes?
No, I didn't. I'm probably going to have to go back and rewatch them, but they were running spots promoting the Golden Globes with Tracy Morgan, who I always refer to as Tracy Jordan because 30 Rock is so indelibly imprinted in my mind, saying, "I am the face of post-racial America. Sorry, Kate Blanchett," which is really funny because the Golden Globes, one of the reasons for their first cultural exile was that they had controversy, basically a racial controversy that sidelined them for a year. And I see it as kind
What'd
of
they do?
They had no black journalists on the HFPA. So
that's kind of bad.
It's pretty bad. Bad by your own standards and sort of unthinkable in general. So anyway, the forced cultural exile, perhaps for good reason, but it's sort of like what everyone was talking about last year, the vibe shift, right? That now you're promoting the Golden Globes with this irreverent, like non-PC. Golden Globes were always the boozy, like Hollywood's night of irreverent self-awareness. So I saw it as sort of a test of the vibe shift, right? Is it really happening? Hollywood had an interesting year. I could go on and on about that, but maybe I could do a monologue on it next week. You're right, though. It reminded me of the COVID-era Oscars, where they did it in Union Station in LA. They did it in the train station, and you had all these celebrities. They were separated and masked and all of that, but the party went on. And it's sort of like that with the split screen Golden Globes and flooding across California, where you said we're already at a death toll nearing $1 billion of damage. Incredible.
I didn't watch, shockingly, last night, but I saw somebody post that they were practically playing kind of funeral music at the beginning of it, rather than their normal celebratory, like we're about to party thing, because they were trying to read the room. They're like, are we allowed back in? Because if we're allowed back in, we're going to make sure that we're very somber.
Yeah.
And we're very measured. We're not having much fun because everybody else is suffering.
Yeah.
But I think this is a glimpse into our kind of dystopian future, where you're going to be seeing these images of our global elites just having the time of their lives within half a mile of complete carnage.
And California is sort of the most interesting place in the world to watch for that, because the wealth disparities in California are incredible. And at the same time, those go along with California is a crazy amount of natural disasters. But you remember the wildfires year where Kim Kardashian and Kanye West hired private firefighters. Right, they build in these areas that are very vulnerable to wildfires, but they can then afford the private firefighters to protect the property. And the same thing, if you're really wealthy and building on some of these grounds that are vulnerable, I mean, it's a different story for you than everyone else. So the confluence of wealth and vulnerability to natural disasters in California makes it one of the most incredible places to watch all of this play out.
Our producer Griffin was pointing out that this is a rare case of kind of reverse environmental justice, that the super wealthy who have built all their houses on cliffs and on these hills are the ones that are actually in many ways the most vulnerable. at this point.
Have you been to Montecito, California?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, one of the most beautiful places in the world, let alone the United States, and one of the wealthiest places in the United States that just got battered in all of it.
Ellen DeGeneres was out there with her selfie stick, right?
Ellen DeGeneres was saying this is what was she saying? A message from Mother Nature, or something like that. But it gets this juxtaposition of extreme wealth and celebrity, and then you have like real questions of privilege that I think are reasonably brought up. It is really interesting. This is from NPR. The World Meteorological Organization, they've calculated that while the number of disasters increased 5 times over the last 50 years, the number of fatalities has fallen by 2/3, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. We have seawalls, more effective seawalls. We have more effective predictive meteorological technology. But at the same time, none of that is quite enough.
Right. And so CNN, if we could throw this tear sheet up, CNN had actually an interesting interview with a couple of scientists who are, they didn't quite make the parallel to the out of control fires that they have in California, but it kind of comes through in the article. But what they're basically saying is that because of the way that California has been built, and a lot of people would say overbuilt, that it was built for a particular climate. The climate has now changed. And so if you add on to that the way that on the fire side, it's constant fire suppression, which then interrupts the kind of cycle that forests need to go through. When it comes to flooding, because they have built up and channeled around so many of the natural water sources, that they don't have a natural way of flooding. And so when you get torrential rains like this, then you get explosive flooding. We have one scientist, Peter Gleicke, says we have to let our rivers flow differently and let the rivers flood a little more and recharge our groundwater in wet seasons. Instead of thinking we can control all floods, we have to learn to live with them. We need new thinking. We need to operate that infrastructure differently. We need to change some of the characteristics of that infrastructure. That will allow us to capture more of these flood flows, store it underground in these aquifers, and then use those groundwater resources when we need them in dry years. And so this is something that California's going to have to do. Like, it's going to require Democrats, who are a one-party state practically in California, to actually do some governing. And say, look, these are the problems that we have. We need to collectively govern as a people in order to respond to them, rather than just lamenting the natural disasters and then just rebuilding precisely as you were built before the disaster.
Well, and California is a one-party state that's basically, the politics are co-opted by corporate interests. And it's not just California Democrats, although California Democrats are a huge part of it. What PG&E has been able to get away with in that state is incredible. And so it's not just a matter of saying we have to do X, Y, and Z. It's a matter of really breaking your bonds with corporate interests that would prefer to control this in their own profitable way, or their own controllable or the least harmful to profit margin way. And that's an incredible task for a state like California that I think is so deep in the one-party corporate control hole. It's a really, really, really hard hole to start digging out of.
Yeah.
And it reminds me actually of what we were talking about when the Miami condo complex collapsed, which is in California, you see similar things, these beautiful locations where we've been able to develop technology really quickly that lets us build up. That's not always going to be there because that's just not how the world works, and it's not how the world has ever worked. That things just stay the same, and you can be safe in one place for millennia. It's just not how it works.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.